obviously there's a lot that one could say about David Lynch. And in doing research for the seminar today, I read several articles. And coming up the stairs, I asked him if he still liked chocolate shakes, because apparently one of his favorite things is chocolate shakes, and it's chocolate shakes at Bob's Big Boy. That was from an interview that was conducted for Rolling Stone. In an interview that, excuse me, in an interview that was done for New West, there was a comment, quote, that I took, and I wanted, it's very short, and I wanted to use that as the basis for starting off today. And it was a question which dealt with Elephant Man and the fact that it was a linear film. And you said it was directing, that you were somewhat hesitant because it was a linear film, but that it was the best thing that could have happened, and having to work with a tight story structure was part of it. It's something I needed, even if I never do it again. I always thought you could break the rules before you learned them. Maybe you can, but it's harder. My question was, what rules were you referring to, and had you not followed those rules before, what was your sentiment about that when you said that?
I don't know.
Good answer.
Well, I think that every film has got a bunch of rules, and like I always said, like on Eraserhead, no matter how strange it was, as soon as you start along one direction, everything else is out of the picture, and that's your direction, and that's your set of rules. And if you don't obey them, you're in a whole lot of trouble. And people, even if it's only subconsciously, they'll pick up on that, and they'll feel that it's not an honest picture. But I think I was talking more about traditional things, like in painting, you can learn an awful lot about technique and rules, but there's always some guy that comes along and breaks all the rules and, you know, makes a lot of headway. But it's good to know some of those rules, and I, for a long time, fought, you know, learning the rules, but I was lucky in a way because I had Frank Danielle and Tony here at the center did this film analysis class, and I picked up a lot of things on certain rules of filmmaking there. And like I said, The Elephant Man was more of a story picture, so I was forced to obey those rules. And
so what you're saying is that the film dictates the rules in part?
Absolutely. Every film is different.
Every film is different in terms of the nature of the rules. Is there anything that you would just, for one example, in terms of the difference between Elephant Man and Eraserhead, since they both were closely, you know, one preceded the other? Mm-hmm. Could you just briefly comment only in one example so that have a sense more of what you're talking about?
No, because they both have rules, and they both, the films talk to you, and you have to listen to them. And if you're doing that, you'll be okay. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to ask you one other thing before we opened it up for questions. I noticed in reading the articles on you that you had initially been trained as a painter, or
Mm-hmm.
that was your initial thrust, and you thought that that was going to be your career, and that perhaps two of the painters that were influential in your life were Francis Bacon,
Mm-hmm.
and the other one was
Edward Hopper.
Edward Hopper.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of those two painters being influential in your visions or the ways that you see things abstractly or otherwise, were there any directors that you particularly paid attention to in the film industry that had some influence on you
Well,
in terms of moving images?
I wasn't like a film buff, you know, growing up, so places influenced me much more than films, and painters influenced me.
More than directors?
Yeah, but I like certain directors, but and I'm sure that they've had an influence, but more so with places.
Industrial?
Yeah, like Philadelphia, I always say is the inspiration for Eraserhead, and it's just...
Besides in industrial areas, what other kind of place would influence you?
Well, I like industry. I like factories and smoke and diners and let's see. Those are about my favorite places, yeah. And Bob's. But I don't like to, I wouldn't want to live in these places, but these are the kind of places that I like to work with. But I like very light places like with Formica, white Formica.
Why don't we take some questions?
Is that what you got interested in the Elephant Man script? Did you see in their images the possibility of images like that we saw in Eraserhead? I mean, there's so many scenes there that I would have thought were taken right out of Eraserhead. And the sound too. I mean, the pumping, throbbing sound industry.
You bet.
Did you see that right away when you did it?
Well, see, the thing is, the Elephant Man was around at the beginning of the whole thing, you know, industry, the Industrial Revolution. So that was one thing that really got me going, and I saw a lot of still photos of the period, and they didn't have the kind of machines that I really liked, but it was so interesting that it was the very beginning of it, and that was real important too, and I started getting like ideas along those lines, and I liked the idea that this person, it wasn't really related, but it was, came out of that time, and that kind of thing kind of was real interesting to me. And out of all this darkness and this twisted, you know, shape, inside was all this light, and that, you know, really did it. Yeah?
How'd you do when you saw Alien?
Well, I heard, and I don't know if this is true or not, but that Giger said that Eraserhead was one of his favorite films, and it did influence him. So I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but I mean, well, I don't know. I don't know about that. I mean, he said it influenced him. Yes?
I was curious, and now I know that you're preparing for Dune, and what are you using for jumping off points to kind of eat your juices going? Are you conceptualizing in terms of machines or certain painters that you pull you off?
Insects.
Insects.
And worms, yeah.
And worms, insects.
Yeah. Yes?
What kind of rules do you anticipate?
Well, Dune is a pretty neat film because it's got all different kinds of things. It's got dreams, and it's got story, and it's got images that are really exciting. And so it's got so many different possibilities that a regular film wouldn't have. But it still has rules. I'm not really explaining myself very good on these rules. There's something that it's an intuitive sort of thing. It's like if you have 3 or 4 ideas, one of them may drop off because it just doesn't feel right, and it doesn't fit in that, you know, story. And it's one of those things that you can't really articulate. It's just a feeling. But every film has got those things, and so it will have its own set of rules. And there's things that will fit in it, even though it's strange and there's lots of things. There's certain things that won't work. Yeah?
Yeah, it's obvious that images are what really get you going.
And sounds get me going too.
And as well. I'm curious what sort of research you did to develop and to come up with the look, how you picked your cinematographer, and what your working method was with the cinematographer. Whether you called all shots, or you suggested a lot of shots.
Okay. Well, I knew I couldn't work with the person I worked with on Eraserhead because this was, I mean, it was my first big film, and I considered myself very lucky to, you know, to get that. And they were going to, you know, surround me with people that had, you know, been in the business for a long time. But I saw this film, Sons and Lovers, that Freddie had shot, and I loved the look of it. And saw a lot of other black and white films. I knew it was going to be in black and white. So I was looking at British cinematographers that had done black and white. And it had to be British crew because we were on the Eadie plan in England. And the Eadie plan, I don't really understand it, but you get some money back from the British government. They take, you have to be 80% crew, British crew, and 80% British cast. So, Sons and Lovers was the best of any of the films I saw, and Freddie hadn't shot a film for 15 years. He'd been directing Hammer horror, movies, and they were kind of worried about that. But I met Freddie, and it was one of the luckiest things that ever happened to me, because he is the greatest person and an absolute genius with film. And you don't always, it's a tough thing, how you work with other people. One person makes all the decisions, or should, but you have a lot of input, and you really kind of work together. I was after a certain kind of feeling, and I talked to him and talked to him and talked to him, and he began to, tune into that, and away we went. And he did a fantastic job, and now he's just finished shooting French Lieutenant's Woman, and that's in color. So everybody was saying he couldn't do it in color, but I haven't seen the film, but I heard that the photography is fantastic. Yeah.
Do you prefer to do your own locationing, or do you leave it up to a location scout?
Oh no, you got to go look at everything.
Well, I mean, some people, some directors will give the idea to a location scout, and the location scout will come back with 2 or 3 and say, why don't you go look at these? Do you prefer to go out on your own, such as go to the Philadelphia industrial areas?
Well, and like in Eraserhead, where most everything was built, and I did all the location scouting myself, but I know what you mean. In London, I didn't know my way around. So people say, well, you've got to go down and look in this area, and you've got to go look in this area, but I always went, myself, but other people went along, of course. But it was at one of these hospitals. We went to looked at a lot of derelict hospitals in England, in London, and it's incredible, because there's these hospitals, and they're just, all the windows are broken out, and the stuff is just sitting around, and there they sit. And you begin to pick up a feeling, because they've been sitting there since this Victorian time, and you really start feeling what it must have been like. And this one that we shot in Hackney was really incredible. Down on the first floor, there was 250 patients, several buildings. But as you went up the stairs, there was more and more dust, and then pretty soon, just filth, and dead pigeons, dying pigeons, and then live pigeons flying around, and no one had been up there for 30 years. And that's where we shot, and we had to clean it all up and fix it all up, but there was an atmosphere there that was incredible, and you could feel you could go back in time. And it was like all those pictures I saw were, I understood more like what it was really like.
By the time you got on the plane to go over there, how long did it take?
Well, on the plane,
No, I mean in general, from the time you
no,
started to the time you picked your location, what was that stretch of time?
from the time I left on the plane till what was done.
So you had a decision on what location. You're talking about a month, 2 months, 6 months?
Oh, let's see. Well, let's see, 2 months, I guess, a month and a half. That was all the time we had, really. Yeah. Yeah.
I had a question.
Wait,
How large part of the Eraserhead was made here at the school to one stage in the film?
How much of it was made here?
Yeah.
Well, have you ever been over to Greystone?
No.
Oh, well, it was a 55-room estate, right? And down below there were stables. And I was fortunate enough to get those stables for 3 years. And so I had like a little sound stage, and we had an attic, a big room, and about 3 or 4 little rooms and a garage.
What I was wondering about how large part of the film
Was shot there.
Yeah, was finished, the year or
I don't know, I misunderstood your question. Was finished the time I was at the Institute.
Yeah.
Well, I was at the Institute for about 5 years. Yeah, so it's hard to say.
But Because there's a radical change, kind of.
I hear things are different now. Yeah. Yeah.
All the time. It's like, talking about the film, there's a radical change in the middle of the film, you know.
You think there is?
Yes.
Oh, huh. I don't feel that, but
Good.
I didn't finish half of it and do it another, you know, like that. Most of it was done right there. Yeah.
A question about the scene in the Elephant Man with Mrs. Kendall.
Uh-huh.
She becomes so important to him later in the piece.
Uh-huh.
I found it a little brief. Was it ever longer or conceived longer, or was there more than one scene conceived, or was that always the way it was?
I know what you're talking about. I don't know if it was ever longer. I'm trying to remember. But I think that's the way it was.
David, what was
Yeah.
your shooting ratio on Elephant Man? I mean, how much?
I think we were budgeted for 250,000 feet of film, and we shot 180,000 feet. But that was 1 week of Warren Beatty shooting. Warren Beatty shot 30,000 feet a day, I heard, and we did 30,000, you know, and I don't know, we did 180 in the whole shoot, so we weren't shooting a lot of film, but yeah.
Something you're involved in the script, how that works?
Well, I came on after the first draft of the script was done, and then I was in on 2 rewrites and a polish with Christopher DeVore and Eric Bergman, and that's it.
You want to? Okay.
Sorry.
You film the films that I think make it hard due to concern individuals who are vulnerable, who aren't loved enough, who aren't appreciated. Could you make a film that didn't have that as a concern? Would you want to make a film that abandoned that theme?
Well, I don't know. Maybe Dune is that. I'm not sure. I didn't pick them because of those things. I guess there's certain things about them that you know got me going. Eraserhead is a real personal film, but I didn't know that Elephant Man was going to follow along. I just really liked it, and if I had liked something else, then you would have been asking a different question. So I don't know. Yeah.
Did you have any difficulty adjusting to communicating with actors
You bet.
on the level of a straight narrative?
Yeah, it's real hard. Since I came from painting, for a long time I didn't really talk, you know, and so it's very difficult to get these little things across if you don't talk. So anyway, they'd been around the block so many times. They could have really made it hell for me, but they were fantastic, and it was plenty nerve-wracking. But after a little while, things seemed to work out, and we did get a good dialogue going. Yeah.
What's your rehearsal time that you had then? Did you
Well,
have a lot of...
not for a lot of the film we were shooting every other day. And because John Hurt was so long in makeup, the next day he got the day off, and we would rehearse in the afternoon in those days. And we'd rehearse before a scene, you know, a lot, and then start shooting. And that's, everybody's got their own way of doing things, but that's a real good way to keep your ratio down, you know, as well. And you just, you know, fine-tune things as much as you can, but I guess sometimes the spark never seems to go out, but I guess it could. But I like to rehearse things and get them just a certain way and then start shooting. Yeah?
I have a two-part question. When you're putting together a script, do you do a lot of drawing and painting of your ideas?
Well, some. I mean, I did more on Eraserhead, for sure. I started storyboarding parts of Elephant Man, but I didn't storyboard that much, but on some sequences I did storyboard things. Did I do? No, my paintings are pretty much different than the films. I didn't draw little scenes out.
Could you talk a little bit about the process you went through in conceiving Eraserhead? Did you come up with, was it the character first? Was it the place first? Was it the story?
Well, it's like, it's a strange thing. I don't know how those things happen. it seems to me that people get little ideas that come bubbling up, and they swim around, and then they hook onto each other, and then they attract other little ideas, and then a big one forms, and then you're onto something. That's how it goes. The first idea was the whole the Eraserhead pencil factory, which has not it's the part in the center possibly that you're talking. Well, that's now it's at the end, near the end. But anyway, that was an idea, and I think that I don't know what followed that, but that was the first one. Yeah.
The Elephant Man has looked physically in the film. Was that based somewhat on fact or
Totally on fact.
That's exactly.
Christopher Tucker, who did the makeup, had the plaster cast of the real Elephant Man in his studio from the museum in London. Yeah?
Was Eraserhead's fully scripted? If so, at what stage of the process? I'm curious, like he is, about the process of it.
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm being kind of vague, but Eraserhead had a 21-page script, and so they said it was a 21-minute movie, right? And so I talked him into a 42-minute movie, and then it kind of went from there. But there was a script, and it was pretty much of a complete script, but it was shorthand, you know, really to me. And this is another thing about these things in Hollywood. You have to have a script that people can understand, and not just one person usually, but a whole bunch of people, and that's a real hardship. And that means certain films are never going to get made, ever. And it's a real trick to get an abstract film, or even what you'd think was almost straight, to them is totally surrealistic. And it's a real trick. Yeah?
In your films, the surface texture plays an important part of your style. And I was wondering if you think that when you work in color, it's going to alter your style.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen, but texture, I love texture. And in black and white, it kind of glues things together. And color, there's something about this kind of glue that holds all this stuff together that's more difficult in color, and I'm worried about it, and I hope that I find a way to to do it.
Do you find yourself covering yourself on dialogue scenes, or do you go in with something that's really tight? How does your cinematographer enter into a lot of cinema?
I don't think we did a shooting script on I've never done a shooting script. I talked to, I might draw little pictures for Freddie, and I storyboarded Eraserhead. So beforehand, then at the last minute you always change, something, but not a whole lot, but certain things in your head are going to be, different when you get there. And so storyboarding I tried to storyboard Elephant Man before I even went to England, and it's ridiculous, before you see the places you're going to shoot and all this kind of stuff. So, and then by that time, when you've picked your locations on the Elephant Man, we were pretty close to ready to shoot. So it's like 2 or days before you're thinking about, the scene you're going to be shooting, and trying to figure out what you're going to, how you're going to shoot it, and talking to the cameraman. And in England, a lot of times Freddie wouldn't care what the shot was. The operator is the one you talk to in England for setting up the shot, and he just looked through and light it, and say how awful it was.
And so I guess you didn't shoot a lot of coverage. You pretty much knew exactly what you wanted.
We didn't really cover a lot of things. No.
In any of the scenes that you did, in terms of visions that you had about ways that you wanted to shoot, did anything happen during the rehearsals with the actors or in your conversations with Freddie that changed your perception and made a scene better, or
Oh yeah, a
vice
lot of
versa?
things happened. That's one of the things. I'm really a lucky person, because a lot of things, well, just like this didn't happen in rehearsal, but there's a scene in Elephant Man where Tony Hopkins drops his tear when he sees the Elephant Man. and that wasn't in the script at all. And it was very strange. That was the only take we did, and everything was planned out. We were going to do this. It was a long shot. I think it's broken up in the film though. But Tony's over here, and he moves across, and then there's a very, very slow move in. And it was incredible because it was a pretty long take. And at the very end of this perfect little move, bingo, you know, drops the tear. And it was one of those things you can't plan on, but it was like magical. Yeah?
Is that, I mean, when you're talking about rules, different rules for different movies, is that, I mean, I gather for the Elephant Man, you are having to get involved with sympathy for the Elephant Man. You're having to get involved with sympathy for him and some sort of ending that was relating to that. Well, is that what, did you find it hard to find in an acting style, and with John Hurt, a way to actually control that emotional level that, I mean, you could fall into that so many times and just become very
sentimental. Yeah.
And become sentimental.
We were fighting that all the way along the road, but in a way, it was almost going too far in the other direction at times, and but John Hurt, he was just incredible because he had this, you know, tremendous, you know, it was like acting inside of a bag, and it was really he was a one-take person. He was always on the money in my book, and I hardly ever had to say anything to him. He just wanted me to assure him that little things were coming through, and they, you know, to me they were. So, but we were aware of this sentimental, you know, business, and we're fighting against that.
Well, did you find a sense of that during the picture, like when you were shooting it? Did you just gradually acquire that sense of what was going overboard and what?
Yeah, exactly right. Now that's something you can't really talk about because it's a feeling. Every little bit of pacing, every little word, can be done a million different ways. So it's all on if it feels right, and you can only go for that moment. It may not feel right, you know, in a week or so, but it's always action and reaction and checking and feeling, and you say yes or no.
You go with your gut, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
When you added was that the Adagio for strings? Was that your decision to do that?
Yeah, I heard that on the radio one day, and I just started thinking about that him working on his cathedral. And one time we were bringing the film to show Mel Brooks, and I wanted them to put the Adagio for strings on, but I was in L.A. with the film. No, the film was coming over, and I called on the phone and asked this guy to plop it in and to start it right when he turned back to the cathedral and just let it run. And it never moved from right there. It just happened to work so well. And we were lucky, real lucky, to get the rights to that particular piece too. But it turned out that EMI owned it, and it was cheaper than all the other ones. So it was really great.
The gentleman in the back.
Yeah.
Could you explain how you went from an AFI student to directing a major motion picture?
That's a really good question. I was thinking about that because I'm sure that some of you would like to know that. There's no way that you can count on these things, but you've got to have a product. So I just say, try to make a film, and try to make a film that you're real happy with. And because a lot of people thought they would use their AFI time to make a film that would be like a showcase picture for them, and they weren't really happy with it. And then if they didn't get work, then it was a double, you know, bad thing. So make a picture and finish a picture and make one that you really care about, and then at least you've got a chance, and show it to as many people as you can. And the rest is fate. There's no two ways about it. Yeah?
Did you ever feel, working on the production with so much money and so many people, and did you ever feel like it was getting away from you, or was it very, very controllable?
It was a very frightening feeling. There's there's always the feeling that it's going to be taken away from you, and get away from you is a little less. But there's a feeling that somewhere along the line, some powerful, person is going to make it all, different. And there's this pressure that is on you, and I don't know exactly where it comes from, but it's part of it is having these actors, their careers are going just fine, and they don't need you to, to wreck them. And so you've got to think about that. There's all this money, and you think about that, and it's a tremendous amount of pressure that's on you. Yeah?
With the thing with the final cut or whatever, when people saw it or when you put together what you liked, that would have been unusual, right? To have to talk about and justify things.
Yeah, well, I had a very good experience. Mel Brooks, it was his, company that did the picture, and Mel turned out to be my greatest ally, and he's plenty powerful, and to keep everybody else absolutely away. And he was fantastic, and I was really lucky. Yeah?
How did you communicate with your actors? And was it intuitive, or was it rationally, or
Well, I don't know how rational it was, but it was, I don't really know. It's, I would talk to them in between each take and say things, little adjustments. I don't know exactly how, but.
Well, did you talk about the purpose of the scene or what?
Well, sometimes, yeah. Yeah, sometimes just as corny as, not so loud there and, slow it down a little bit here, and this word is, the meaning of this is coming through this way and it should be this way or something like that. But most of these, like Sir John Gielgud will give you exactly what you want. All you've got to do is tell him, and it's really true. And he tunes right in. It's incredible. And he has several times helped, with other people because he was so, right on the money. He'd say, well, he means this and this and this, and like that, and everything would come together. So it's just that you can't let the scene be over until you've got what you feel it should be, and that's. You just keep working till you get that.
Did you ever have to say, no, I don't want that, and
yeah.
Was it a confrontation?
There was a couple.
And how?
Well, it's well, yeah. Well, you you've got to win.
What if it mars? You worry that it will mar the relationship with the actor, or do you just use your judgment about how far you go and how you do it?
Well, yeah, I mean, you worry about those things. I don't know how far you could go. I mean, I'm sure there'll come to a point where you just both walk off the, the set, but you keep on trying to get, what you want.
Go ahead.
I was looking through the script we have up here, which they told me was the final draft, and there were a lot of things that seemed sort of like talking head scenes that ended up getting chopped.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, was that Coates or was that you?
Well, that was me. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from Anne. Anne is I really love working with her, but there again, you don't just turn a film over to an editor and say, so long, and I mean, you work, was with her every single day, and I didn't well, sometimes I'd go away while she cut things, but then a lot of times I'd sort of, be right there, while she was cutting as well. But she's got a real good feel for pacing and putting together a scene, and, a lot of it is her. Yeah?
I was wondering if you described a little bit of the process of getting performances on the alternate, but I was wondering what the process was like in Eraserhead, where it was not realistic acting in a sense.
It was totally realistic.
Right.
There is the same thing. It's a feel, and we had plenty of time for rehearsing on that. Like Jack Nance would, we rehearsed together, and then we didn't have any stand-in, so he would have to go through at least the moves for lighting. But that was rehearsed down to the little degree. And a lot of times, like you say, it wasn't really natural, but it had to have a certain feel, and that took a long time to get sometimes. But sometimes people would tune into it and get it fast. But Jack, for instance, was right on the money. Yeah.
The Mark on that, must have been a control car doing his makeup. What sort of material did you use, and how was that Mark?
Well, that is foam latex, the whole thing. And Christopher Tucker, I guess these guys make this stuff up themselves, their own little blend. But it's this foam latex is so light that you can squeeze it, and it's it's like squeezing air. It's incredibly light.
But that this part of the mark was so open. Did you ask them?
Yeah, well, he could talk fairly plain with all the teeth and the makeup, but it was very uncomfortable for him. He couldn't eat anything. He could just drink through a straw, and he had it on it took 7 hours to put on, and then he had it on for another 10 hours.
Oh,
so it was a good long day.
On that subject, how did you make the baby's head? What happened?
I don't talk about the baby, and I don't talk about any of that kind of stuff. And I have this, on the Elephant Man, everybody knows about stuff like that, but I think that kind of stuff wrecks films, and I can't stand to pick up a magazine and find out how things were done, because then you start seeing that in the movie, and it's a bummer. Yeah.
Okay, let me have another question. I don't know, how did the casting come about in Elephant Man?
Well, John Hurt was the first choice for the Elephant Man, and he was cast first.
It was your first choice?
Yeah, and everybody's first choice at the same time. Casting was, I could say no to people, but a lot of people were, it was going to be totally British cast. I didn't know too many people. I didn't know who was going to be able to, be available. But pretty nearly everybody that we wanted said yes to the thing, except for Freddie Jones, who turned it down first and said that the part of Bites was totally flat and he didn't want any part of it. And then I read just that part, and he was absolutely right. So I got together with him, and we changed a bunch of things, and he became real happy. And that's when that sort of love-hate thing started going in there, and he was, very happy, and it was great to work with.
Also, I heard that script, or a draft of that script, or that story has been floating around for years.
There were 4 Elephant Man scripts going around. There were several plays, like 6 plays, and not all of a sudden, but in a short period of time, a couple of years. And it's just the time was right for it.
How did the project, how did the script, how did you come to it, or how did it come to you, and then what steps did you take before you got into Mel Brooks, or how did that relationship evolve?
Stuart Hornfeld was working with Mel Brooks. Stuart had seen Eraserhead and really liked it. Stuart and I became friends, would go to Nibbler's instead of Bob's and have coffee. And then I asked Stuart if he knew of any scripts that were available to direct, and he told me about 3 or 4 scripts in The Elephant Man. And
Had Brooks on the right side?
no, he just mentioned it, but it just flipped something inside of me, and I knew that was the thing. And he got me the script, which, like I said, had already been written, from Jonathan Sanger, who had bought the option to the script. And I met with Jonathan. Jonathan had seen Eraserhead. Jonathan liked the whole idea of the thing, and he asked me to direct it. So Stuart, Jonathan, and I went to some studios to raise some money, and we got turned down. Meanwhile, the script was in Mel's office, and he read it. He loved it, and he wanted his company to do it. Then Jonathan said, "Okay, David, I'm with you, but Mel hasn't seen Eraserhead yet." So that was something else. And but Mel went in and saw it, and he came screaming out, yelling how much he loved it. So it worked out. Yeah.
Yeah. Could you do that with how your involvement with Dune?
How did that come about? Well, I don't really know why Dino thought of me, but he called me up and asked me if I wanted to direct this picture Dune? And I said, June, and he said, no, Dune. Well, he didn't call me, one of his, people did, but I read the book and really liked it.
Go ahead.
I'm curious about the casting, and that since you casted with all British people, I'm sure they had some curiosity about you and your background, and I have a kind of funny picture in my head of Sir John Gilder looking at Eraserhead.
I don't know if Sir John ever saw it, but
if any of them did.
I think the crew all saw Eraserhead. I don't know how many of the cast did, but a strange thing, I think that Sir John would like Eraserhead. Okay, but anyway, but Eraserhead was opened in London during the time the Elephant Man was, being shot, and it did pretty well in a regular run in London. So I don't know, maybe some of them saw it. Yeah.
Yes,
sorry.
David, I know you used a fade in your both films, Eraserhead and Elephant Man. Why'd you fade from scenes as opposed to one with just a straight better? Is there something deferred and fade?
Yeah, it's like.
Because it's like it's a stop in the flow.
It is. I know, and like in the Grandmother, I think I even stopped for like a long time in black, and I don't know. I guess I like it. It feels right, but it does stop things. I think too much in the Grandmother a couple of times. Maybe it goes on too long, but. And then in the beginning of Elephant Man, I worried about putting so much black in between, those elephants. And but I like the feel of fades.
Did Anne give you a hard time with that?
No.
No.
In fact, boy, we really. I think that she probably. I don't know what she'd been working on, but more or less traditional kind of cutting. And this like. The theater sequence, we really had a lot of fun on, putting that together. And it was, like all the elephant things and business like that was a lot of fun. She went right along with it. I really think she's great. And if I wanted to change something, there was no problem. She'd change it, instantly and try any kind of different kind of things and really try to make it work.
Go ahead. You had one.
Yeah.
The relationship with the guy you always work with.
Alan, yeah.
How did that evolve, and how much was he working with you when you were actually the film?
Uh-huh.
At the end?
Well, mainly Alan comes in at the end. Sometimes we've had, like on Eraserhead, we made some sound effects before we started the picture. But our thing is like picture dictates sound. And so you find the sound that works. And we sit together and make these sounds, and then Alan cuts them in. It's and when it's like another thing that's on feeling, you can't call somebody on the phone and tell them what you want. You gotta listen to things and act and react, and just keep searching and then find the thing that seems to work. And it's a mood thing. Sound is, to me, it's sound and picture is all you've got, and so it's super important, and it can do so much for the mood of a scene. Yeah.
Well, I've noticed that everyone that we've heard about, Mel Brooks, Rossellini, they all love Eraserhead, but it seems to me that kind of film, also people that we showed it to must have hated it, as Tony Bellani said. What was it a big struggle for you? I mean, did a lot of people not understand it as a
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean.
It's obviously you're a talented filmmaker watching it, but would I want this person to direct my film? Is that what they thought?
Exactly right. I don't know. Mel, took a chance on me, and that's and it happened to work out for him. But it could have been different.
You had one.
Yeah, I wondered if you could talk about the time after Eraserhead and before Elephant Man. Were you writing? Were there other deals?
I was building sheds in my backyard. I built 3 sheds during that time, and I had a paper route to support myself during Eraserhead, delivered the Wall Street Journal at night. And then I'd find wood and things on my paper route. And I built the shed out of found wood and things like that. And I wrote a script called Ronnie Rocket and tried to get something going with that. But they didn't see it.
Was that because Zoetrope sort of...
Well, Francis, that's true. After Elephant Man, Francis read Ronnie Rocket and wanted me to do it for Zoetrope. And that looked like a fantastic thing. But Francis hit a huge snag, and that was the end of that.
So you,
Yeah.
so being in LA and working out of Greystone and in the basement, in here, sort of in the midst of the industry. I mean, you always, a part of you pictured yourself directing,
No.
films for a lot of people. Something would say no.
No, I didn't.
How did you appear then instead of staying Philadelphia?
Well, I wanted to make films. The American Film Institute, they gave me, they did everything for me. The Independent Filmmakers program allowed me to, do The Grandmother, and that would have been the end of it for me. Because they invited me out to the center, I've just always, the door kept opening after each film, so I kept going through it. But I never thought I would be directing major pictures.
There is a point in the film where the doctor, Tony Hopkins, asked himself, he's not sure if he's really that good man, better man.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's not any better than, is it Bite? Is that
Mhm.
Bite?
Yeah.
The original exhibitor of the Elephant Man. Despite the sort of the lofty, obviously lofty cinematic and artistic virtues of the film, did you ever ask yourself that question, that what you have here basically is a film where the
Exploiting
audience
something?
comes to marvel and cringe at the beast like the
No,
1921?
because it is that, but it goes beyond that to me. That the whole idea of the film is not exploiting something. It's the spirit inside of the Elephant Man that made him so special, and it's the idea that inside of people is something different than what's on the outside, and he just is a perfect example of that. It's not exploiting deformity to me one little bit.
Not for you.
No.
But
Not for
do you
me.
ever wonder about what the audience is there for?
Oh, what they come in for? Oh, yeah, sure. I'm sure a lot of them come in for the wrong reasons. And but a lot of them change their mind in the film. Some people, maybe think it's a bummer that it wasn't more of a horror film.
Why don't we take about 2 or 3 more questions then? Go ahead.
I take a lot of classes with acts where they talk about plays and analyze. Do you think in terms of the theme, your ultimate goal, or is it more intuitive than that?
Yeah, it's more intuitive, but I think that, like I said, the film analysis classes, really are important, where you break everything down and analyze, bit by bit. And the idea of the structure of a film is super important. And so many people don't think about that before they go in, and they end up having a lot of trouble. Not that you're not really locked in, but you should have some solid structure before you go.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want a small technical problem. You have made a specific work about gray, white, and for its black and white pictures. And sometimes, especially in the United States, there are very subtle nuances between gray and black. It's almost black, but just a little. Well, and so to succeed such a small nuance, did you use the room like they were and just work with the lights, the amount of lights you put on the wall, or did you have sometimes to change the colors of things so it doesn't come out like you wanted?
Well, we did in Eraserhead. The sets were a lot of times, a couple of them were grays and blacks in the set, and then we did a lot of tests and things like that. But I never painted shadows in the walls or really changed things after we started going. But there were lots of tests done, and lighting took a long time, and it was real finely tuned lighting, like you say. And a lot of times we'd have to shoot things twice because the first time it just didn't look right. So.
In gray, black and white work, is it very easy to evaluate what is, when you come in a place which is still like that, is it easy to evaluate how is this red is going to come out? What value the red is going to give gray or green or blue?
After a while, you get so you can sort of tell that, and then you have your little glass that you look through, and you can tell once you've seen dailies, and then you go back to that room and you've got the glass, it all comes together, and you know what it's going to look like on film.
Okay.
What do you see any future with you in television and that sort of medium?
I think there's future for all of us in television. Yeah, I'd love to work in television sometime. Yeah.
Directing tape? On tape?
Tape, yeah.
Yeah. Really?
Sure.
Stark contrast. David, I think that on behalf of everyone here and the American Film Institute, I mean, everyone would join me in saying thank you very much.
Thank
It's been
you all.
terrific.
Thanks a million.